We have a very strong team of volunteers in our piping and drumming and competitions, and so I've been kind of heading up that team for the last number of years.
I've been involved with the piping scene since I was a wee boy. I started in Antigonish, and there was a sort of a deep culture of piping and whatnot.
I've never really been to a dance where the piper was the main musician behind the step dancer. It's always been the fiddlers.
I got to know Ron Rollo very well, and subsequently Bruce Gandy when he was just a little youngster. Bruce and his son Alec have done a good job at the Citadel here, and kept a very keen awareness in the community about their position in piping in Nova Scotia and the world.
This is Pipers'Persuasion again, Alan Hamilton, and this will be the 104th episode of Pipers'Persuasion. And the subject today is the Antigonish Highland Games, or Highland Society. That the Antigonish Highland Society was founded in 1861, about 75 years after the Gaels first began arriving in Nova Scotia. They celebrated the St Andrew's Day, and that was about 1861. And 2 years later, they held the first Highland Games at Apple Tree Island in the east end of the town. Since then, the Society has sponsored more than 150 Highland Games, while supporting the Gaelic language, piping, drumming, Highland dancing, fiddle music, and step dancing. And they also predominantly in athletics and the ancient Scottish heavy events. Sit back and enjoy, because I'm going to get Danny Gillis to tell us all about it from his perspective, point of view. And it's handy to know who we're talking to. So, Danny, could you tell us a wee bit about yourself, please?
Yes, I was born in Cape Breton, Nova Scotia, to Scottish and Irish background parents, and soon after that we moved to Antigonish. I grew up here. I attended school and university here in Antigonish. It's a university town. St. Francis Xavier University is probably our main employer in town. And I after that, I moved around a bit, worked in the Philippines as with a church group, and came back to Canada and spent my whole career working with in overseas development. But as in terms of my piping, I started learning the pipes when I was 11, and we had an up-and-coming band at the time. So I started playing the pipes with the band when I was 12. Me and my younger brother both joined that year, and played the pipes with that band for about, I guess, 10 years. In our final year, we went to Scotland, and we placed in the grade 2 band competition, the top overseas band, and I think we came third in the world championship that year. So soon after that, though, our band broke up, and I played with various bands since then, all in Nova Scotia. And
what bands was that, Danny?
Yeah.
Go ahead, the name of the bands.
The band I played in as a young fellow, it was the Antigonish Legion Pipe Band, That's the band that went to Scotland. Later on, I played with the Scotia Legion, which Barry Ewan was pipe major. He was our pipe major at the end for the last 2 or 3 years of our Antigonish band. And then he became pipe major of Scotia Legion. And I played with that band sometime later. And then my brother Jerry was pipe band of the Antigonish Highland Society band in the early 2000s. And so I joined him and some other former pipers from our old band that came back to play for a few years. I guess we were in our 40s then. Yeah.
Good. That's excellent. So I take it you're retired now, and
I am.
like myself, and you just enjoy piping. And what have you got any official function with the games?
Yeah. Well, we have a very historic Highland Society here, as you mentioned. It was started in 1861, and it's been going strong, ups and downs, but it's still very strong now. We had our St. Andrew's Night banquet just two or three nights ago. So I was president of that society for a couple of years, and then I have also been the chair of the piping and drumming for the last 8 years or so. So we have a very strong team of volunteers in our piping and drumming and competitions. And so I've been kind of heading up that team for the last number of years.
That's excellent. Do you do any judging or anything like that? Is it more administrative work you do?
It's administrative. Yeah, that's right, Alan.
Yeah,
It's more getting the volunteers in place and getting all the registrations taken care of and, getting all the events lined up, organizing the judges to come here and all of that kind of thing. No, I don't judge myself.
So we now have a wee word or three with a well-known personality in Nova Scotia as Doug Boyd. Doug, tell us about yourself.
Thanks, Alan. Thanks for having me. I've been involved with the piping scene since I was a wee boy. I started in Antigonish, and there was a sort of a deep culture of piping and whatnot. My dad was a piper, started late in life with the local senior band there. And my first recollection of the Antigonish Highland Games was marching next to the band as a wee boy, probably 7 years old, carrying a chanter, playing as the band walked down the street heading for the game. So I've been around quite a while around the Antigonish Highland Games. I don't think I've probably missed more than a half a dozen over my whole lifespan. So I started piping really at the age of probably like most people, 10, 11 years old. I joined the Antigonish band, and at that time it was under the direction of Bill McGuinness, who was a tremendous influence on piping in the Antigonish area and in Nova Scotia at the time. Bill was from the Black Watch and came to Antigonish to teach the band, and under his direction, the band had tremendous success locally, certainly in the Atlantic area and Antigonish, but also across the country as well, winning North American championships and early on. So I was part of that at the age of, I think, 12 was my first time won a North American championship, and then from there, sort of progressed through my piping career, taught at the Gaelic College, had a tremendous experience working with the likes of, Finlay McNeil and Angus McClellan and those types came over to teach there yearly. When I was in sort of the late 70s, I taught a number of bands. Sprigs of Heather was a young band in Cape Breton that I taught for a couple of years, very successful. And then I taught the Gaelic College band as well. And then when after Antigonish band, which had done very well, finished up, there was a band sort of was a collection of players from around the province called the Scotia Legion Band. It was under the direction of Barry Ewan. Of course, a very successful piper, a tremendous leader, and very influential in my life of piping. And Barry taught the band very successfully, a grade 1 band. When Barry left, I took over the band in grade 2 at the age of 23. We had a lot of success, and then the band sort of folded. A few years later, I was asked to join the Halifax Police Organization when I was in Halifax. Led that band for 5 or 6 years. We started as a grade 4 band, had quite a bit of success through the grades, and moved up and got to grade 1. Led the band in grade 1. Then stopped for a few years, and my 2 sons got involved with piping. And of course, through all this time, my niece Andrea Boyd, who you're familiar with, and has been a very successful piper around the year, was involved with a lot of piping very successfully in the area as well. My brother Ian was a drummer in the band, the Antigonish band as well. And so, I worked with Dartmouth for probably 7 years. We moved the band from grade 4 to grade 1. I then left the band, took some time off with my family. My kids started to play, and I joined the Dartmouth group, Dartmouth and District Pipe Band, and spent a few years with that band, and was pipe major brought the band from grade 4 to grade 2. We had some great success, and then my last foray was the Halifax Police Band. Really sort of evolved into becoming the 78th Highlanders Halifax Band, now under the leadership of Alex Gandy, who's Bruce Gandy as well. Yeah. And so I came back in the 2011, 12 years, and played with that band for a year. And so that's sort of my background, Alan.
Our McIsaacs and Kennedy connections started in Inverness, Cape Breton, where I was born, and then moved over to the New Waterford, Sydney area, where I ended up going to the Gaelic College in Sydney, about 15 miles from where we lived, to take chanter lessons, and then go to the Gaelic College at St. Anne's, where Seamus McNeill used to come over and teach there, and Ken McKenzie and Lieutenant McDonald or McClellan, Angus McClellan.
Angus, yep. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and those McIsaacs and McKinnons and McDonnells and so on, and they followed into Inverness, and those names were very much still even today in the piping game, McDonnells and so on, and then Barry Ewan, and Dr. Angus MacDonald ended up marrying Emily MacLeod, from whose people were originally from Pictou County. Her mother was a Dunbar, and was instrumental in the first pipe band being formed in New Glasgow area, the girls' pipe band, the Cayley, which I ended up 30 years later teaching to get in 1973 to get the 1972 World Pipe Band Champions under Ian MacLeod from Edinburgh as our guest band, and they spent 10 days in Pictou County and Nova Scotia, including a concert in Antigonish on the games field there. Guys in the band back then, George Lumsden, Jock Percival, all these guys. The outset of it all was that once they were over here and it was a incentive amongst a lot of young people, young boys especially, because the pipe bands in Nova Scotia, predominantly about 90% of them were girls' bands. But after the Edinburgh police visit here, and the next year, the Air Force band from Ontario come down, the 400 Squadron, and we had them on tour. So there was an interest triggered amongst young boys to learn piping.
So historically, can we, to the games that started in 1863. So what was a typical Highland Games content. I understand it's athletics and what have you. Can you describe what was going on in the games field at that particular time when the game started?
Yeah, back in the beginning. Well, there were no bands, of course. It was individual pipers who competed, and you might only have maybe 4 pipers that would come to the games and compete. Then the other aspects of the games, people wanted to see the track and field and the heavy event kind of events like the caber toss and the stone throw and the hammer throw. And there would also be Highland dancing. Was also even in 1863 that there was a Highland fling competition. So those were the events way back then. And concerts were always a part of our games. So it's evolved since then. It almost died out, I think, around the 1900s, but it made a comeback. There was a new Highland Society executive came into place, and the Highland Society itself is its main event is the Highland Games. So it's started the Highland Games 2 years after it started, and I think it's a symbiotic relationship. You know, without the games, we probably wouldn't have a Highland Society, and without the Highland Society, there wouldn't be a games here.
Can you describe the pipe band competition for us?
Yeah, we have one grade one who consistently comes here. That's the 78th Highlanders, the Halifax Citadel Band. They come every year. It's been a while since we had a band go up against them because we don't have any other bands in our we call it our Atlantic region. So occasionally we'll have a band from Ontario or Washington, City of Washington came up one year to play grade one. Grades, I'll just mention the other grades. We have no grade two bands in the Atlantic region. So the last couple of years, we haven't had grade two competition. And then in the other lower grades, there's about 10 bands, 12 bands that compete each year.
Okay, that's fine. Are you inhibited, or are the bands inhibited by distance from the likes of Toronto, for instance, to Nova Scotia? Can you describe for the folk in Europe here what distance we're talking about, Toronto to Nova Scotia?
Yeah, it's 1,800 kilometers to Toronto from Antigonish, so that's a long way for people to drive, or expensive for people to take the plane, of course. So I do the trip often. It's a good 18-hour drive.
Aye, a drive,
Yeah,
but if you're taking a plane, what is it, an hour, 2 hours in plane or what?
Well, yeah, the airport is an hour and a half from Antigonish, nearer to Halifax. So you get there, then you wait for a couple of hours, and then you get on the plane, and it's about 2.5 hour flight to Toronto. Yeah, so it's not very convenient in terms of air travel either. You know, you're adding a few hours on either in either direction.
And it's expensive as well when you're taking the whole band.
Yeah.
So that's North America, of course, vast distances that, and people don't appreciate even over in Australia the distance between Perth and Sydney, for instance.
Well, the bands that were there in the early 1960s were bands like the military bands in Canada, Archie Cairns bands, the Canadian Guards, and the Black Watch under Bill McGuinness and Duncan Rankin. There was the RCAF Rockcliffe band, and there was about 5 top grade one bands back in those days. You know, and
let's just talk about piping in the games.
Yeah.
It's also my understanding from notes that let's just talk current and then we'll talk historic. What events do you have in the solo piping at the games? Describe the events you have.
Yeah, we have a whole array of amateur events from grade 5, starting with chanter competition, right from then we have all our grade 5, 4, 3, 2, 1 events with Pibroch, March plus Strasbourg and Reel, and a jig or hornpipe for the upper grades. And then we have a full slate of open piping competitions as well with the same lineup.
That's excellent. And I take it that there's quite a good turnout of competitors.
Yeah, like last year
events.
we had, I think, about 12 in our open piping competition, and
Okay.
really top pipers. Like of course Bruce and Alex, they often win. Last year we had Sean McKeown from Ontario here, and he came tops in grade 1. The first time the Gandys had not won the Open Piper of the Day trophy in about 20 years, actually.
It did attract a number of great solo players down to Antigonish. People love to come to the games. It's the camaraderie is exceptional. The music is exceptional, not just in terms of piping and drumming, but the whole Celtic music scene down there in Nova Scotia, Cape Breton is also significant and important. So it's always been a great attraction for not just having great judges, but we had tremendous people come in and compete at the games. You would know many of the names, Alan. Certainly the Bruce and Alex Gandy have been competing there for years. Dr. Angus MacDonald was certainly a judge and certainly competed at the games. The likes, Barry Ewan was a great competitor there. My niece Andrea, Michael Gray, of course. I think Jimmy McIntosh has been down and competed there in years gone by. I mean, Matt McIsaac, John McLean's, James McCaddy, obviously, Andy Rogers, Ian Spears has been over and played at the games when he worked at the Gaelic College.
So, who typically comes to judge for you?
We often have Bob Worrell, people like him, Michael Gray. The last year we had Michael Gray and Drew Duthard were here along with Bob. We also have Doug Boyd and his niece, Andrea Boyd, have judged in recent years. Anne Gray has also judged here recently. Hugh Cameron for drumming. So we often have the backup judges, like they work part-time, like Bruce and Alex Gandy, Rod McLean from Nova Scotia. Yeah.
We had a lot of local judges, like you met Jack McIsaac and the likes of Jack and others of his vintage who were tremendous supporters of piping and drumming in Nova Scotia. And later on, we had tremendous judges come down and support the games. Bob Worrell has been a stalwart for Antigonish over the years. Ken Eller, even John Wilson's been over and judged. Ian Simpson's been over lately. Ed Nye, Ron Rollo, all the names that you might expect, Jim McGilvery, Ray Mackay. I can go on and on. Michael Gray have all been tremendous judges on the piping side over the years. Yeah. One thing Antigonish has always prided itself in is bringing in top level judges to judge the solo event.
So how prominent was the Pibroch competition in the early doors, and is it much more prominent now, the say to pick Pibroch as an example?
Oh, for sure, Alan. I think when we think back to some of the, in the early days, and I'm sure you've heard this from others, Pibroch was not something that was sort of pervasive in the area. When the likes of Bill McGuinness came along, he started to teach, a military guy started to teach some Pibroch locally, and there was a little bit there, but certainly one of the greatest influencers and sort of drivers behind it was Dr. Angus MacDonald when he came, of course, and he did some teaching. He started to encourage people to play Pibroch and become, and as some of the local players like Andrea, like the McLean boys and whatnot, Andy Rogers, as they started to, get involved in more their solo careers, they started to, look outside for a little more support. And then certainly with what was going on at the Gaelic College with Finlay McNeil, of course, a tremendous Pibroch player and teacher of it back in the late 70s, and certainly Angus McClellan. These people were tremendous. And you have to look back at the Gaelic College and what it's done for certainly supporting Pibroch playing over, people like Bruce and Alex Gandy and Dr. Angus and all the great players, Andrea and Matt Mackay and all the people that came. Pibroch was always a big part of the solo contests. And
the MSRs, the
yes,
Quebec, that would build up over the years. Typically, many tunes do competitors submit now to the judges before?
It's usually submit 3 of each, and the judge does the selection of each of the tunes.
Just normal Highland Games stuff.
It is. Yeah.
Do you award prize money, or is it cups or shields, or what is it?
It's both, of course. They have trophies that have been in place for many, many years, as you can imagine.
Yeah.
For all levels. They even have stuff like the best solo piper in the Antigonish County. You have those.
Yeah. That's a local piper side.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And the prize money is it's certainly competitive with any of the Ontario games and whatnot for the most part. So the open prize money is very, very good. And so certainly as you would know, no pipers go to play in a contest for the money. It's just not the way it works. But it's very worthwhile. Alan, I got to say, I think a lot of pipers come down and play, and bands come because of the enjoyment of these games. It's such a great weekend. They have so many different experiences with music and food and camaraderie that over the years, virtually every year we have a band that makes the commute from far away.
And the tradition of Highland dancing, you mentioned the Highland Fling. Is that more or less just kept for the Highland Games, or do you see it often enough?
Oh, you see it in formal concerts. Again, at the St. Andrews Night just a couple of nights ago, the Highland dancers performed 6 or 7 dances. Often younger girls. It's all girls now. You hardly ever see a guy. But those girls were up on the stage dancing for us for a good 20 minutes. Yeah, so but it's a high level of competition at our games as well in Highland dancing, and the local dancers do very well. Here we have, again, just like the step dancing teachers, a number of excellent teachers that have come up through the years, and now they're in their 20s or 30s or older, and so they're giving back to the dancing tradition by teaching younger girls.
Your field events, I take it there's running. Is there any long distance races round about the games fields?
Not anymore. There used to be a full slate of Olympic style track and field events, but that faded out in the 80s, I guess. And our main athletic events are all related to the heavy events competitions. But we do have one 5-mile road race that is kind of a cross-country race that people of all ages and abilities will join in. It's one of the opening events of the Highland Games, and they have a very beautiful route that they take out along the harbor and back into the Highland Games field where it ends up. So there might be 200 people lined up at the start line that are heading off. Some of them walking, but some of them very competitive as well.
Did you ever do it yourself, Danny?
No, I haven't done that race. No.
No, I did a
I'm
wee bit.
69 now, so I don't know if I'll ever get into the race.
I used to do a wee bit running in my 20s and 30s.
Yeah.
And I quite enjoyed it in a way. I'm into hiking now. That's what keeps me going, you know, a wee bit hill walk. But unfortunately, approaching my 82nd year, it's flat walking rather than hill walking now, you know. But it's good to get out there, and the people will enjoy that at the games because it's a participant sport, if you like, and everybody's involved. What sort of crowds do you get at the games?
We don't get enough of a crowd to pay for the games. We have to really rely on our business community and government grants to do it. But the best way to tell is I think when we have a tug of war event and everybody on the field, whether they've been watching the heavy events or some of the other events, they'll gather around the tug of war, and you can tell that there's thousands of people there. You know, there might be 12 or 2,000 people probably is where we would max out at for games.
I've been a judge in the Antigonish or the Atlantic Circuit for a number of years as well. So been around a long time. I've seen a lot and experienced a lot, and I have to say much of it has to do with I guess the tremendous culture and support and involvement certainly around the Antigonish area and certainly the Antigonish Highland Games.
We have our games in the middle of July.
Good. I was
Back in
wondering
the
about
older times, we combined it with a fall fair. That was well before my time. You know, my memory goes back to this early 60s, so it's always been at the same time of years, middle of July.
Good. How's the weather typically?
Oh, it's a beautiful time of year. It's you know, some of the hottest days of the summer are when we have our games. Often, you know, it's up in the close to 30 degrees. So it I learned something last year watching the Pibroch competition, that I have to make sure that all the Pibroch competitors in open anyway get to play in the shade, because the sun was shining right on them, and of course that's not in their pipes. So next year I will set up my field so that they have a good shade the whole time they're playing.
It's interesting. I go to Inverary Highland Games each year, and that's very well organised. And they have several platforms, say about 6 platforms on the go at the one time.
Yes.
And they've all got sort of 4-poster shades, and both the competitor and the judges are sitting there. It's open sides, but it gives them some level of protection from the rain and the direct sun, if you like. One of the photographs he sent me, I had to smile. I will post it when we're talking about the chanter competition. As a youngster was sitting playing a practice chant, and the judge was underneath the umbrella. And
yeah. That's what we do. We protect the judges. We don't protect the players. We have a lot of trees around we have a beautiful little glen. We call it Piper's Glen, that all the solo competitions take place in. And there's a lot of tall maple trees around, so that it does provide shade, but you have to sort of notice where the sun is shining so that you can make use of that shade. Yeah, it's a real community. It's like the homecoming for the town. It's the biggest event in the town, so and county. So all the young people in their 20s and 30s who have gone away to work, they all come home, and we have a big Saturday night pub, and it's packed. You know, there's a good 1,000 people in that pub each Saturday night after the game. So it's got a great tradition, and it's kind of a sacred trust for Antigonish to keep it going.
Because I think it's very important to draw everybody's attention to the fact that there are very, very high quality events being held elsewhere other than just Scotland. We have big events in America and Canada, Australia, and various other places that should be recognised. And I thank you very much, Danny, for your time today.
You're very welcome. And yeah, be great to
Oh.
talk to you again.